Hello. Right. It's a lot of people. I'm not sure I can imagine all of you naked, but I'll give it a go. All right, especially you. So first of all, the first thing you need to understand is I hate running. Really don't like it at all. Which makes entering the 2014 Marathon Des Sables a bit of a strange choice, because that's a run. It's quite a long run. It's 250 kilometers long, and it's across the Sahara Desert. So it's basically a marathon a day for 6 days. Not quite. Day 4 is a little bit different. That's the long day. That's 55 miles in one go. You do day 4, you get day 5 off. That's all right. And then you just have like a full marathon on day 6. So the organizers provide you with overnight shelter, thus, and they give you regular water replenishments, but everything else you need for the week you carry on your back. So I'm talking about your sleeping bag, your cooker, your fuel, your toilet paper. Bearing in mind you're micromanaging every gram in your pack. My spoon weighed 7 grams. You're trying to work out how much you can take. So that's an interesting calculation. How much toilet paper are you going to use in the next 7 days? You take your flip-flops for when you're not in your trainers. Because of the extreme heat and distance, your feet tend to expand and swell as the tissue breaks down. So people start the race in trainers 2 sizes too big for them, and you basically hope your feet will be knackered enough by the middle of the race that they'll fit. And then you take your food. That's a big part of what you can see laid out in front of me there. So you're looking at 3,000 to 5,000 calories a day. And even with that much, your calorific deficit is enormous, somewhere between 4,000 and 7,000 calories a day short on what your body is using. So essentially, I was running 250 kilometers, and I was carrying a pack weighing 11 kilograms. It's like running from here to just outside Brighton, carrying the equivalent of a 2-year-old toddler. So the first question I get asked normally is why? So it's normally like this. Why? And the honest answer is twofold. First of all, it's personal challenge. I wanted to know if I could do it. It's been described as the toughest foot race in the world, and I wanted to know if I could do the hardest version of something. If I was going to be an idiot, I wanted to be the biggest and best kind of idiot I possibly could be. And I knew it was going to be hard, but I knew I'd get round, and I knew that fact with concrete and unwavering certainty. Because the second part of the why question, the answer to that is ego. It was less that I wanted to know if I could do it, because I knew I could. It was more that I wanted to say that I had done it. In my head, I was just a dinner guest 5 years from now, quietly not telling this story, because you know it's going to come up. You've done what? 150 miles across the Sahara. Well, it's 156, but yes. So I didn't expect that laugh. I've totally lost my place. So what's it like? There we go. It's amazing. Like, genuinely, it's amazing. The experience is unbelievable. I remember the start very, very clearly. It's hot like you wouldn't believe, and there's 1,000 runners. And the air is full of excitement and low-flying helicopters with camera crews and AC/DC blaring out, and you're just off and you're running. And it's 3 kilometers of like hard, flat, packed mud. And then you reach a literal line in the sand and you start climbing and you crest the first peak, and it is Lawrence of Arabia as far as the eye can see. Now, not all of the Sahara is how you imagine it, but some of it is, and it is majestic. It is absolutely awe-inspiring. And we were up and down those dunes, the tallest dunes in the Sahara, for 10 relentless miles for the first half of the first day. And day 1 was 22 miles. Day 2 was a little bit further. It was nearly 24 miles. And I remember getting to the end of day 2, turning a corner and seeing the finish. I was 400 meters out, and I remember that point very, very clearly, because it's the very last thing from the race that I remember. Because at that point, it turns out I had fairly extreme heat exhaustion. And when I say fairly extreme, they had to put me on a helicopter and take me to hospital. My body temperature was 42 degrees Celsius at that stage. In old money, that's 107.6 degrees Fahrenheit. So at that point, your body's not trying to cool you down anymore. It's actively heating you up. I had hyperpyrexia, so my body's generating heat to maintain that temperature. My body's basically trying to kill me. So at that point, I did what I think is the only sensible course of action in those circumstances. I went to a coma for a week. I just let somebody else deal with it. So it turns out I had a fungal infection in my lungs, probably had it before I went out. I developed fairly severe pneumonia. Both of my lungs collapsed, and my liver failed. And so the next question I get asked is, what was that like? And the honest answer is I don't know, because at a certain point, this story stopped happening to me, and it's happening to other people. Yes, I've tried to put myself at the center of the story, and yes, suddenly I'm the eye of the storm. But the point of that metaphor is the eye is very quiet. So at the moment, I'm reading The Fault in Our Stars by John Green, probably the last person on the planet to read it, so don't spoil it for me. But there's a point that he uses that I want to try and paraphrase, which is, I'm the grenade, and I've gone off. And everyone close to me has been hit, and the closer you are, the more it hurts. And I want to give you a couple of examples. So my girlfriend at the time was my listed next of kin. She gets the phone call at 9 o'clock on a Monday night, and just says, Lee's fine, but he's been casevaced out by helicopter for emergency medical treatment. And she's given a phone number to ring to get more information. But the phone number she's given is wrong by 1 digit. So she gets no information for 12 solid, nerve-shredding hours. And then she's responsible for phoning my family and my friends and explaining to them what's going on. So what's happening is the blast radius is widening. And stuff that's happening to me in Morocco is having effects on my nearest and dearest thousands and thousands of miles away. And the information coming out of the hospital is confusing and contradictory, but ultimately they're told that I'm okay and they can come and visit. And they're fairly stringent about who can come and visit. So my girlfriend, pretending to be my wife, and my best mate, pretending to be my brother, which is kind of weird for me because he's quite short and very ginger. And quite frankly, nowhere near as handsome. So I've no idea how they pulled it off. But they're told that, you know, I'm okay and I'm awake and they can come and visit. So they're only allowed in one at a time, so my best mate comes in first. Because I assume my girlfriend just wants to draw breath after the kind of day she's had. And so he comes in, and I know what he's going to say, because we were in the army together, and he's just as much of a douchebag as I am. And he's going to walk in, and he's going to say something obnoxious and facetious, like, it's all right, mate, don't get up. And he can't. The words never make it out of his mouth, because I'm clearly not awake and looking forward to seeing them. This is me having an awesome time asleep. Now, I am undoubtedly only alive today because of the medical care that I received in Morocco. The doctors and nurses were absolutely superb. And I can prove it to you because I was very, very ill. And I'm all right. So they were clearly quite good. But the information coming out is kind of contradictory and, as I said, confusing. And language is a little bit of an issue. So what happens is they decide to scan my medical records in and send them back to the UK to a doctor friend of mine who's having them translated from medical French into medical English, and then from medical English into lay English. And then this is going back to Morocco so that my girlfriend and my mate, and my other mate who's come out, and my girlfriend's mum who's come out because they're doing shifts, can find out what's going on. And what happens is basically my doctor friend in the UK is going through the notes. And at a certain point, when she's working out what's going on in the case, she looks up at my friend, her husband, who's a very close friend of mine, and just says, you need to be prepared for the idea that he might not come back, ever. And my girlfriend's auntie, who's also a GP, puts it more firmly and just says, he's not going to make it, and we need to get the family ready for when that happens. So that sucks on a fairly massive scale. But I didn't die. But what I was able to do was map out this expanding shockwave, and I found out who heard and when and where they were and what they thought and how they reacted. And people close to me were knocked sideways by this thing, obviously. And to be able to see that, to have that experience, that's a rare gift, I think. It's an extraordinary privilege. And I just want to talk a little bit about kind of what happened next, what happened afterwards for me, because I did genuinely start to think about things a little bit differently. And it's not about big, grand gestures at all. You know, I love big, grand gestures. I'm a little bit theatrical about these things. And everybody wants to live in a Richard Curtis movie, but you can't. Not really, and certainly not all the time. So I started to think about the little things and the smaller things you can do differently. So I just want to share two small stories with you and just talk about how that's kind of changed how I think. So in 2012, I came out of a meeting and I got to my car. There was a note folded under my windscreen. And I went, oh, God. And it turned out to be not what I expected. It was this. It says, hey, stranger, it's my 27th birthday, and I'm doing 27 acts of random kindness. And you are one of them. And I just want to wish you a great day. Keep smiling. So I smiled. I thought that was cool. I told my friends about it, and they thought it was cool. I didn't want to throw it away, so I put it in my glove compartment. I didn't think about it. I didn't think about it for 2 years. And then about a month ago, I found it again. And for one reason or another, about a month ago, I was running out of reasons to smile. Just one of those times in your life. Everybody has them. And I found it again, and I opened it, and it made me smile again. It's just a small thing. And it's just this idea that I've kind of picked up on from the world of sport about marginal gains and doing the small things differently. Now, what I love about this in particular is the person who wrote this has no idea. The two halves of this story will never, ever come together. The person who wrote this will never know that they made my world a better place. Twice. So far. Now, the other story I want to share with you, back in 2003, 2004, I was serving in Afghanistan. And I became quite good mates with one of the guys from the embassy. And we all got home safe. And then in 2010, whilst on a work trip to the Seychelles, he went snorkeling during his lunch break. Sadly, he never came back. They found his body 24 hours later. Now, despite serving, I've lost 0 friends in combat, thankfully. But between a helicopter crash, a suicide from post-traumatic stress disorder, a motorbike accident, and now a drowning, there are numbers in my phone that I can never call. So I thought about this, and I thought about how there was a hole in the world where my friend had been, and I wondered if there was anything I could do. So I sat down and I wrote a letter to his parents, and I said, "You don't know me. I'd be surprised if David had ever mentioned me, except in passing. But I think it's because you don't know me that it's maybe important that I share with you some of the stories that I have about your son, because you would never hear them otherwise." And I got to the funeral about a week later, and this big guy came bounding towards me, literally barging elderly relatives out of the way. And he comes up, and he shakes me by the hand, and like literally shakes my whole body by the hand. And it was David's dad. And my letter had had a small but profound impact on him. And he then embarked on a mission to hear all of the stories from all of the people he didn't know that well, because he wouldn't have heard them otherwise. And I hope he's still going, because that letter took me like an hour. And so it's because of that, and I now look at things in a slightly different way. And both of these things happened before my episode in the desert, but I view them differently through this lens of small consequences. And people say don't sweat the small stuff. And I'm saying do sweat the small stuff, because you can. Do a small thing over here, and you can have a big impact over here, or even a small impact over here, but impact is still impact, and that's the point for me. And this is the stuff that I think about. Now, I can't tell anybody how to lead their lives, because I was given a 5% chance of surviving that coma, and I still snooze my alarm 3 times in the morning. I don't bounce out of bed all carpe diem every day. But I do genuinely... Don't, you'll throw me again. But I do genuinely think about things a little bit differently. Now, I'm not from this city, but I've been adopted by Birmingham, and I found it to be an incredibly warm and friendly and welcoming place. And we're very, very lucky, I think. But I think we can be more lucky if we just try and sweat the small stuff a little bit. And ultimately, after all of this, my ego still wins, because I got to stand here at TEDx and tell all of you stories about myself. Thank you.